everybody, Matt here from Matt's Movies, Music and More, welcoming you to this week's episode of What Did You Think? We're getting this really good, aren't we? And as you'll remember a previous episode, the Twister Spinner landed on comedy, and the movie that was picked for comedy this week is the Happy Time Murders. Okay, it sounds like someone's a bit disappointed with this. Okay, The Happy Time Murders is a new movie that has just been released theatrically and is directed by Brian Henson, the son of the famous puppeteer Jim Henson. And it stars in the lead roles Melissa McCarthy, Mayor Rudolph, Joel McHale, Elizabeth Banks, Leslie David Baker, and Bill Barretta as Phil Phillips, who is really the main character in this film. Now, as it's a new movie, we normally have a disclaimer at the beginning of the video, which is, Andrew, have you seen this movie before? And if so, when was the last time you saw it? But because it's a new movie, obviously we've both seen it recently. Although I've seen mine in other forms, whereas you went and saw it theatrically.
That we probably shouldn't discuss on an open channel.
I
appreciate that.
Exactly.
I will say that around January or February on the internet, you started getting videos and lists of movies to watch out for in 2018. And there were a couple that right at the end, after they'd listed everything else, listed odd movies like Crazy Rich Asians. It's not a sci-fi movie or an action movie, but I just want to know what the hell the title Crazy Rich Asians is all about. Well, you might be surprised.
It sounds very politically incorrect.
It's a rom-com. It's very diverse, but that's off topic. And there was a concept art photo of something that looks like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but with puppets. That got my attention and on my radar of things to see.
I think the best way to describe the Happy Time Murders is an adult version of the Muppet Show. Would that be the best way to summarise it, do you think?
That would be a perfectly fair way to look at its premise and its concept, yes.
I think this is kind of a risky move, really, because could it not put the Muppets and all those other puppeteer shows, Fraggle Rock, Sesame Street or whatever, in a little bit of some sort of jeopardy, because obviously it's going in an adult direction, so it's making those classic kids shows look a bit, do you get what I mean?
Sesame Street, the producers of that show would agree with you, because there was a lawsuit about the tagline that they had, which was "No Sesame, all streets." So that there was a brief lawsuit that got resolved, but it does show that kind of you're damaging our brand image anxiety there. But to that, I would repute by saying we have things like Team America and Avenue Q, the stage show.
I've not heard of that.
It tackles, I would say, similar territory to this. In a different way, it's a social commentary play thing, but we'll get to how this movie differs from that. But my point being is that we have had puppets do adult things in the past.
Well, Team America, which is a movie I hope we can talk about here at some point.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised that Jerry Anderson's production companies didn't try and take Trey Parker and Matt Stone to court about it, because it really does rip off Thunderbirds, the way it's done 100%.
I dimly remember a rumour about how he wanted to do that, or how he disapproved of the movie. Yeah,
but it's a shame. I mean, it's a great film, but again, as you say, it's ruining existing brands.
Well, the Muppet Show started not in this extreme territory, but it started with adults in mind. It just so happened that network interference insisted that it be geared more towards family audiences. I say that because Brian Henson doing something like this, it's not a million miles away from his father's original intentions.
Yeah, because if you look at, obviously,
a couple of thousand miles perhaps, but
because if you look at obviously with Jim Henson's career in particular, you'll remember that in 1983 or 84, the Jim Henson studio brought out The Dark Crystal, which was a box office bomb, but it's become a cult classic, but it's because it's so dark. It's not the enjoyable family movie that I suppose people were expecting from the Muppets, because Muppets have been bringing out things like the Muppet Movie, Great Muppet Caper, Muppets Take Manhattan, and all that sort of stuff. And then they bring out The Dark Crystal, which is extremely dark, and then Labyrinth a few years later, which obviously was again a Jim Henson production and film that he directed and stuff like that. But you could see that Henson wanted to sort of make more, I suppose, adult targeted films.
Maybe experimental might be a better word. That he wanted to innovate, and with both the puppetry and the tone of his work, and this is sort of a continuation of that, or a continuation in today's climate of entertainment and taste.
But there was also another one they made in that franchise as well, which it's not linked. None of those movies are linked to Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. But there was also Mirror Mask, which was also another Henson production, which I don't think is a family movie either. I think it's more darker and different sort of tones, I'm guessing, right? I've not seen that one myself.
I suppose the point we're trying to make here is that this has precedent to it.
Yeah.
Whether it's any good or not is another matter altogether, which we will now get into.
So when did you actually see this movie? How recent?
This week.
Okay. I saw it about a week ago as well, albeit in dodgy
in unofficial circumstances.
Yeah, he's trying to cover up for me, so yeah, that's cool. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Welcome. You're very welcome.
But I suppose, do you want to describe the plot, or do you want me to? I think probably best if you do it, as it's more fresher in your mind.
I will also add to my viewing experience that at the time of recording this is the second week that this movie has been out, and I had to search for a decent screening of this within a 10-mile radius of where I live, because 8 to 9 out of 10 cinemas have already dropped it. I saw lots of last chance to see, whoop, it's gone. And then when I did find a cinema that played it, I was in a tiny screen with about 4 or 5 teenagers, young people. That we'll get to the review portion shortly, but that should. What does that tell you about how much faith cinemas have in this movie? Anywho, the plot is a world where puppets coexist with humans. They don't get into the whys of how this is, when this happened, but there is an opening narration of how humans live together peacefully. All racism has been eradicated because all humans of all races and creeds all agree on one thing: they hate puppets. Puppets are second-class citizens. They're called felties or socks. In the street, they get beaten up. They're especially afraid of dogs. And in this world, we have Phil Phillips, a private detective who has his own agency. And initially, this lady puppet, who's very much the femme fatale, walks into the office and, please help me, office. Please help me, detective. I'll do anything to help you. And it's to deal with a blackmail case, find out who's mailing her. And it's from there that he goes to a pawn shop, where we get our first case of, ooh, puppets are doing rude and naughty things. But from there, whilst he is distracted, a puppet gets his head blown off. Felt and cotton everywhere. Ooh, nasty. The police get involved, and it's from there that we discover that he used to be a cop, the first puppet cop on the force, but something happened that we will eventually get to throughout the movie, and his partner used to be Melissa McCarthy's character, so you have the tension of they don't like each other because of what happened. And from there, another puppet gets murdered, and from there we learn they're all connected to the Happy Time Gang, which was this family-friendly show of Muppets and one human, and they're now all being bumped off for some mysterious reason. And from there, the plot really goes into your basic go and find this guy who used to work on the Happy Time show and find out he's a crack addict. Well, I say crack addict because one thing they establish is that puppets are addicted to sugar. That's the big joke. Sugar, sherbet, they love the stuff. So go somewhere, find out a Happy Time member is now under less than salubrious circumstances. They're addicted, they're a sugar head, they're working as a stripper, they're an inbred family in the middle of nowhere, and then they keep getting killed one by one by one by one. And both Phil Phillips and Melissa McCarthy have to ultimately settle their differences and solve this.
It's an interesting cast of people, though. You've got some really funny people in the movie. I mean, Melissa McCarthy and Mayor Rudolph, who've worked together many times in films. Melissa McCarthy's partner, I believe, is also in the film as well, who's also a director. He has a little bit part. And then you've got Joe McHale and Elizabeth Banks, and also Leslie David Baker, who is famous for playing in the American Office TV series. But what I found interesting about the Happy Time Murders was the Phil Phillips character. He's voiced by the actual guy who puppeteers him, whose name I think is Barretta, Bill Barretta or something.
Something like that.
Yeah,
yes.
And it sounds like he's doing a Robert De Niro impression because the way he talks, it sounds very much like De Niro. And in fact, if you didn't know it wasn't De Niro, you'd be quite surprised.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I do see shades of that now that you mention it, and arguably. He is the central puppet character, and Bill Barretta does a great job of making him charismatic and funny. And that's the thing with Muppet movies like this. Eventually, you either buy into the fact that these are walking alongside humans, or you don't notice the seams, pun intended, too much.
You had a scene in the movie which is probably the most famous scene, which. For any of you out there, which you'll probably remember, is the puppet sex scene.
Yeah, I'll say right now that the audience I saw it with did laugh throughout the movie. So obviously, on a basic level at least, it works for its intended audience. They were in hysterics over two particular scenes, which I would have laughed at if the trailer hadn't already shown them. One of which is the puppet sex scene, in which ultimately climaxes, ha 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 ha, silly string comes out of his crotch.
Yes.
And goes everywhere.
Yeah.
And gets on people.
Yeah, yeah. But what was the other scene that you noticed in the trailer?
Well, I have to kind of recite it. It's when Melissa McCarthy takes the sugar and seems to OD for a second.
Yeah, because there's another subplot in this film.
Yes, yeah, that's...
And the subplot is that we think it's like a lie to get around going to interview one of the gang members from the Happy Time gang, and basically Phillips says that his partner. Who they're forced to work together by the detective in charge, and it's about that she's got apparently a puppet kidney.
Puppet liver.
Puppet kidney, yeah,
yes.
liver, yeah. So that's why she can do that. But then they show a flashback of that later on, so you find out why. And one of the things you find out about Phillips is that he is an expert marksman. He has the best accuracy of a shooter out of the entire police force. Or
he should do, yes.
Yeah, but he screwed up, in which the Melissa McCarthy character blamed the fact that he missed because he didn't want to shoot a puppet. And that's the running joke throughout the whole thing, is that he didn't want to shoot another puppet.
Yeah.
When in fact that's not true.
No, it just missed by a slight millimetre and ricocheted off and hit a poor puppet bystander, and his daughter was left crying, "Daddy!"
And this is where the ultimate why one thing happens, the butterfly effect scenario in a way, which is this happening comes into play later on in the film.
Yeah, in a very basic linear fashion,
but at the same time it kind of feels very random, because you're watching this film and you kind of have an idea of who you think is the one that's responsible for these murders, but in fact you kind of get that I suppose, boomerang thrown in the face where it doesn't go the way you're thinking because there's another sort of double cross and stuff like that.
Did you get that? Because I sort of always suspected who the killer actually was. Because there wasn't, in my opinion, that many suspects or red herrings put into the plot, because this is a 90-minute film and didn't have any opportunity to develop this world.
But I suppose the fact that there's quite a few gaps in our conversation about this is that we're both kind of probably speechless about this, aren't we?
If I sound speechless, it almost gives credit like this is a really shocking movie to me, but it's not really. I'm not angry at this movie. I'm just disappointed because I'll bring this. I have to bring this up because every reviewer and critic under the sun has brought this up when it comes to this movie. Meet the Feebles.
The Peter Jackson
1989 movie, which had a walrus cheating on a hippo with a cat. It had a frog addicted to heroin because he was a Vietnam vet, and we get a full-blown flashback of the horror that he went through. We have a rat selling gun arms to a whale. We have lots of things being thrown at the screen all at once. All these subplots. We get yes, it's vulgar, crass humour, but it's a lot of it thrown at once. This just, not only is the plot very basic and linear, goes somewhere, gets killed, goes somewhere else, someone gets killed, goes somewhere else, someone gets killed. That's the movie. But not only that, but it feels a bit like a 5-year-old has just discovered the words poo and fart and piss and jizz and sex for the first time and wants to recite those words in front of their parents and feels so proud for doing so.
But this movie obviously hasn't made the impression that they were hoping in America, because from paper you look at this and you see the poster and you think Melissa McCarthy, and you kind of think this could work because she's kind of the hip actor at the moment that is this sort of, she could easily attach to this, whereas another actor, if you put a more respectable actor in this role, it wouldn't work. It works well with Melissa McCarthy because she gives as good as she gets.
She does a functional enough job. It probably helps that she had a script and wasn't entirely on revolving ad-libbing, although there were a couple of things that gave that impression that rubbed me the wrong way. When she's suspended from duty at one point, she feels the need to go around the office and go, right, you're a bastard, you never returned my battery charger, you're a bitch, you're not a natural redhead, I hate you, I don't know you, I think you're all right, you stop trying to perv around and flirt with me. It feels like...
Yeah, she wanted to sleep with the other one, which happens to be played by Ben Falcone, her real-life husband.
Yeah, it feels like they just let the camera roll in it. But Melissa McCarthy was functional enough, but I almost feel like anybody could have played that role. And secondly, between this and Life of the Party...
Which I haven't seen.
No, I haven't seen either. Can You Ever Forgive Me had better work as intended, otherwise this has not been a good year for Melissa McCarthy.
But this movie, I mean, it cost apparently a reported $40 to $47 million, and I believe nearly 20 million of that was to Melissa McCarthy.
I can believe that.
Yeah. But the box office in America has been really disappointing for this movie. It's taken $24.5 million. I have no idea how much it's taken in the UK, but I know it's not been good.
Well, not if it's disappeared from 90% of cinemas within its second week.
But I can really see this film becoming a cult classic, especially on home video. I think this is going to get a real cult following, this movie, because it's different.
I don't think it's quite clever enough or original or innovative enough to hold up under repeated viewing or scrutiny. I'll say it's not it's not awful. It's not without some merit. The actors are trying here. I mean, Maya Rudolph as the sympathetic, loyal secretary. You're a good man, Phil. Is the only human actor who seems to have said, you know what, I'm going to try and go for something here. My name is on this.
I think she does a really good job, Maya Rudolph, and I found out a lot more about her because I discovered her when I saw a very underrated movie, which I hope we'll discuss on here at some point, the Mike Judge movie, Idiocracy, and she is in that, and I think she's hilarious in that, but I think this could be one of her best roles because she is quite good in this, and it's really funny the way her performance is.
Yeah, fair enough. I'd say it's mediocre. You can watch it. I mean, you don't have to be a teenager or a young person to enjoy it, like I found out. It's one of those comedies that you can sit back and either there will be one or two jokes that you'll laugh at, as we've discussed, or let out an involuntary snort or giggle. You know those kind of movies?
Yeah.
I'd say if you have to watch this movie, rent it and get some beer ready. Or better yet, get some beer and rent Meet the Feebles. It will ultimately be a better use of your time and money. There, I said it.
But here's a quick question, because you went to saw it theatrically. What are the other movies that are out in cinema in the UK at this time that it's competing against?
Christopher Robin is still doing really well, because everyone in Britain loves Winnie the Pooh. Mamma Mia 2 is not going anywhere.
Yeah. But what would this movie be competing with regarding similarity, regarding comedic adult movies or action films or anything like that?
That's a fair question. I don't know if The Equalizer 2 is still playing anywhere.
Yeah, that film's been dominating the UK box office surprisingly well.
Yeah. Nothing else springs to mind at the moment, but I'll probably come
So
up with
really,
something.
this film is kind of a unique one at this moment in time. It's come out at an ideal time, but being a summer movie, because it's come out theatrically during the end of summer.
Well, if you can call September the end of summer,
its American release date is end of August.
I call the end of August, September as a kind of dumping ground. The kids are back in school, so they're not going to be able to watch any kids' movies. Smallfoot doesn't come out until October. So, and it's too early to have any of the big Oscar contenders, all the big awards-worthy movies or anything with great brand recognition. So September, you can dump anything practically. I think that was their reasoning behind this.
Do you think that this movie could potentially be, in the new year, a contender at the Razzie Awards?
I don't think it's that bad, in my opinion, but I wouldn't put it past the Razzies to go, some people didn't like this, let's put it on here. The Razzies can be shooting fish in a barrel, shooting low-hanging fruit, and I fear this is going to be one of those times. Again, it's not awful, it's just mediocre, and there are better examples of this kind of thing out there. Avenue Q, Meet the Feebles, Team America, like I said. It's been done better and with much more depth and social commentary. Team America had puppets screwing with each other, but it also had America's war on terrorism and Hollywood actors' interference with politics. What does the Happy Time Murders have, apart from racism is bad?
Puppets are scared of dogs? That was a weird scenario when it came up in the movie. You were like, I can see why the puppets are scared of dogs.
That was a chuckle when one of the murder victims opens a door and it's dogs and it's tearing them apart.
Yeah. This is where I've been quite quiet in this video regarding my own personal opinion of this movie, but
no, go ahead.
I'll be totally honest with you on this. I've seen the movie twice, and I actually thought it was alright. It's not anything special. It's not something that I could see myself watching over and over again. It's the kind of film that I think I wouldn't buy it, I wouldn't own it,
No.
but if it happened to be on late night television at some point, maybe sometime after 11 o'clock, and I'd been out with my friends and come home after going out, and it was on, I'd probably watch it if there was nothing better on.
I can understand that. I don't blame you for thinking like that. I'm just perhaps a little more picky and judgmental in saying that I expected better from Brian Henson. And hearing about the production of this movie, that this has been in development hell for 10 years. Cameron Diaz was going to play the human partner at one point. So, and hearing that, perhaps this clouds my thinking, but watching it, it does make me feel, yes, this does have the air of a withered husk of what it should have been had it been made 10 years ago. It's been left out to dry and it's a shadow of its former self. I've mangled my metaphors here, but who framed Roger Rabbit with Muppets? It should be good, right? That should be great. Make it, but...
I suppose that's where the casting comes into play, really, because Roger Rabbit, great Bob Hoskins, and he's fantastic in that movie. Melissa McCarthy does an okay job, but if anything, I think it's Phil Phillips is the best character in the film.
Yes.
He is really, really funny, and as I said, he's got this sort of Robert De Niro air to him, and you kind of feel sympathy. Like as I was watching this movie, there was a scene in which early on in the movie, which Melissa McCarthy really shows how much she hates Phillips, and she's standing next to his car, and she throws a milkshake on his windscreen, and he just drives off, whatever, and nearly ends up crashing. But I kind of thought it would have been funny if he'd put the windscreen wipers on and the milkshake could have sprayed on her, but clearly she probably was like, you ain't putting no milkshake on me in this movie, I can tell you that.
No, they wanted to emphasise that the character is in a bad position, I get that.
Yeah, because he's the most interesting character in this film.
Absolutely.
And his backstory, you kind of think to yourself that after seeing this movie, do you think that they're aiming to make a sequel before the box office came in? Do you think they were aiming that there would be a Happy Time Murders 2, meaning that those characters would go on? I know it wouldn't be Happy Time Murders anymore, but the characters might go on into another movie? That's
an interesting thought, and I can find myself thinking along those lines, yeah. But right now, I feel like that the adult entertainment division that Brian Henson set up, and this was the first movie from them, I hope this doesn't tank that division.
You think there could be potentially some better films to come out of this?
From a guy like Brian Henson, yes.
I suppose it couldn't be any worse than The Dark Universe.
True. I think we can all agree.
Yeah. So I suppose that's all.
We have a logo that's established our cinematic universe.
Yeah. But sometimes it's not a good idea to jump before you can walk, right?
That's probably a discussion for another time, but that is a sad trope of Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to add to the Happy Time Murders?
Not that I can think of. Again, I'm not angry at this movie. It might end up on my worst of list at the end of the year, but only as a dishonourable mention. Let's not pick on this movie. There are chuckles to be had, but there are far better examples of puppets bonking each other. Believe me, I've seen them.
Well, fingers crossed that if this YouTube channel goes really well and stuff, you'll be able to check out his top 10 best and top 10 worst lists, hopefully sometime next year after all the movies are released and reviewed, because as I say, the reason why I get Andrew involved here is because he is a real film aficionado, as you can probably tell, who goes to the movies as often as he can, whereas I tend to watch a lot of films either on Blu-ray or at home, old movies especially.
I'm new movies guy, you're old movies guy.
Yes, but this is, one of the newest films that we've spoken about so far, and again, like with Attack the Block, I think we had very, very contrasting opinions on this film. And again, that's an interesting thing to say, because you are going to meet people that are actually going to go out and say, oh, I like the Happy Time Murders, I thought it was a good movie, and other people are going to go, oh, that's crap.
Yes, and I'm glad to meet someone who can get enjoyment out of this, so thank you for that.
No problem. So I suppose that's the end of the happy time. Uh-oh. It's
What?
that sound again.
Oh no.
It's the spinner time.
Oh yes.
Yeah? Couldn't be any more worse than Happy Time Murders, no?
No, but after this, I'm prepared. Give it to me.
So, Happy Time Murders was replaced on here by The Naked Gun, which is a classic 80s movie. So, we will do the spinner now and see what it comes up with, okay? So, without further ado, let's see what the spinner does. It's landed on family. So that means that the movie we'll be talking about on family for the next episode is the 1987 movie Whitewater Summer, starring Kevin Bacon and Sean Astin. Now, a lot of you out there, including you, are probably going, what the hell movie is this?
Yes.
Yeah? Well, that's why I kind of suggested this one myself to hopefully be reviewed on this channel, and I'm really glad that it's come up this early. But hopefully, once he's checked it out and I'll watch it again for my homework, that we can talk about that movie, and we will be sure to catch up with you very, very soon. So don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and check us out on our official Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course the YouTube channel. I'd like to say a big thank you to my special guest here, Andrew, who's doing a sterling job on this channel.
Happy to be here.
Thank you very much, and we'll catch you guys very soon on What Did You Think. All the best. Bye-bye.